today also in the studio we have the recently elected by a landslide, Mr. Aubrey Norton, newly elected leader of the People's National Congress Reform. The Forbes Burnham Foundation is one of the organizations that promotes and seek to focus on the legacy of Forbes Burnham. So the election of a new leader obviously is of interest to us because over the years we have been trying to promote the legacy of Forbes Burnham. We have been trying to make sure that people know the contribution that he has made, and since the leader of the People's National Congress has been recently elected, we thought it's only right that we have him today with us so we can talk about the things that he would be seeking to promote in relation to perpetuating the legacy of Forbes Burnham. And before we go to the leader, I want to say welcome to you, gentlemen, and I would go to Mr. Alexander because, you know, today is also a sad day for us at the Forbes Burnham Foundation because we have lost an icon, a Guyanese icon. I'm talking about Dr. Lunk. Those of you who know her know that she has been an educationist, she has been a promoter of culture, she is a black conscious person, and she has worked in the region promoting education and cultural integration in the region. And I know, Mr. Alexander, I would be inviting him right away to say something on behalf of the foundation in relation to the passing of Dr. Lunk.
Morning to the viewers. You may or may not know that Professor Dr. Lunk was a member of the Burnham Foundation. So apart from all the things that we can and will say about her, for us it is critical to note that she was a very active, committed member of the Burnham Foundation. We therefore are, like others, feeling the loss by virtue of her recent death, and wish to express our condolences to her relatives, to the extended Pan-African family, and to all of those who in any way would have been associated with this woman who can be described as an icon. When one speaks about Professor Lunk, one can reverse a normal saying. You know, there's a normal saying that says some people are jack of all and master of none. But I would say she was a master of many, and she wasn't in fact a jack of any, a master of many. When I say a master of many, one has to think about her involvement in language, her involvement in music, her involvement in Pan-Africanism. I think those are the three main platforms that one has to look at when one talks about Professor Lunk. She came from a family of musicians going way back to her grandfather and kept that legacy up. She was unable to pursue at the academic level, in the first instance, her first love, music. But she continued along with the Royal School of Music, and parallel to her academic pursuit, she was able to get to the highest level in music. She was able to get to the LRSM, which is a certificate of competency as a music professional. Even as she pursued that, as I said earlier, she pursued academia and specialized in the area of French, and more specifically French literature. And that's where she started with the scholarship that she got from the government of Guyana when she went on to study at the University of the West Indies and then further afield in France. So there we have her on one hand doing as much as could be done in music, professional level, at the same time pursuing academia and achieving her PhD in French literature. She became a practitioner in those fields and was one of the more accomplished musicians in Guyana until the time of her death. At the University of Guyana, she became embedded as someone who was responsible for carrying on the teaching of French and French literature. She's often referred to as Professor Emerita, but many do not remember that she was an individual professor before she retired and was rehired and became a professor emerita, so that she achieved professorship in her own right, even before the university gave her the merit of professor emeritus. She was also a dedicated Pan-Africanist. In fact, we have lost the matriarch of Pan-Africanism here in Guyana. She was the head of the Guyana chapter for decades and involved many others in Pan-Africanism here in Guyana, sponsoring them in various ways, as well as she was recognized beyond these shores for her involvement in the Pan-African worldwide movement. I must myself pay homage and tribute to her because my first venture into this area was indeed because of her as well. I was a mere resource person to her organization when she invited me to accompany her to Belém to a Pan-African conference. She was a Pan-Africanist par excellence and the matriarch here in Guyana of the Pan-African body and of, in fact, the African Guyanese community. Professor Lunk was someone who was dedicated and committed and lived for those things which I've just mentioned. She lived for her music. And she sought not just to live for it, but to make sure that it lives on. And so, for example, she introduced at the University of Guyana the program in music, ensuring that educators could have come to the university to be educated in the field of music. They can now carry on, now that she has passed on. She took over the Princeville Orchestra and gave that a continued life as well in the area of music. She was the leader of the Pan-African movement, and we know of the activities she organized almost on a monthly basis. And we have there the Pan-Af Garden as a part of her legacy, a place where she brought us together under the umbrella of Pan-Africanism and where we can continue to gather under that umbrella. We have indeed lost someone who is an icon in not one area, in many areas. A woman of steel, a woman of worth, a patriot. And she was recognized in that regard by 2 national awards, the CCH being the highest which was granted to her. Today we mourn the loss, but as we mourn the loss, we celebrate the life of Professor Jocelyn Lunk and commit ourselves to carry on her legacy.
Thank you, Vincent, very much. I thank you very much for that input there. But on behalf of the Circle of Love, a musical group that I'm a part of, Dr. Lunk was one of the persons who said to me, Heinz, I don't want you fellas to sing with any music. You're better without the instruments. Always do a cappella. You sound better that way. So I want to say that she was one of those persons who believe in this group that I'm a part of, the Circle of Love. And I want to give the community the assurance that the Circle of Love will continue to do what we're doing in relation to a cappella singing.
If you'd allow me to intervene here, your first performance as the then Georgetown District Quartet
at the City
was
Hall.
Was it the Culture Center, I think?
The City Hall.
City Hall.
The City Hall.
She played at that concert as well.
That's right.
And immediately after that performance, she inquired of me about the group and said that this is a real good group and that she would be prepared to encourage this group to continue the tradition a cappella
singing.
of a cappella singing. From the very inception,
Yeah,
she recognized the talent, and the person she was interested in culture and music embraced the group immediately.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think invited the group shortly after to perform at one of her
functions.
Her functions. And one of the functions which she annually had was the children concert. The children concert which she held annually.
Thank you, Vincent. I want to tell our viewers that right about now, we have with us the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Vincent, and I know how you feel about the party and the party's association with the Forbes Burnham Foundation. And I would like to assume that you're equally as happy as I am to have the leader of the People's National Congress Reform. But before I go to him in terms of what he would like to say in relation to what will be his platform going forward in relation to the party, I would invite you to perhaps make a statement about his presence here today.
Well, to you, the listening viewers, the Burnham Foundation exists primarily for the purpose of commemorating and memorializing the life of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, ensuring his legacy stays alive. One of the institutions which is critical to the legacy of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham is the People's National Congress Reform. So the Burnham Foundation, albeit a non-governmental organization, always has an interest in what the People's National Congress Reform is doing, because that's a main institution in terms of keeping the legacy that we're interested in alive. In that regard, coming up to the Congress, we had invited the candidates to appear on this program. In fact, to ask them questions about how they intend to keep that legacy alive. Unfortunately, the only candidate who was available was the one who is now the leader. I'd like to congratulate him on his ascendancy to leadership of the People's National Congress Reform. He was the only one who was available, but we wanted all of them, so that program was not realized. But now that he has become leader, we are glad to have him here today, not only to congratulate him on his success, but to have him speak with us, the Burnham Foundation, about the legacy of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham and how he perceives that legacy still to be relevant and to be pursued by the People's National Congress Reform. So I welcome you, Mr. Norton, to the State of the Nation. State of the Nation is intended to be reviewing the thoughts of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, looking at the relevance of those thoughts to Ghana today. And so that's exactly what we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Vincent, and I want to say congratulations as well from a leader, and I would want to go straight into your comments in relation to how you see the party. You know, there have been lots of challenges over the years. There have been lots of undulating experiences as far as the party is concerned, and you're now the leader. I would like you to tell our viewers what would be your thrust in relation to moving the party forward and to a large extent the country, because the People's National Congress Reform as an institution is one of those institutions that embraces persons all over this country. And I want you to start right away by saying to us, what is your focus, what would be your thrust in relation to the party moving forward?
First of all, let me say thanks for the words of congratulations. It would be remiss of me if I do not express condolences to the family of Professor Jocelyn Lunk, who departed this earth, having made a significant contribution to Guyana. I therefore wish to place on the records our condolences to her family and relatives. It is also important that I say a special thank you to the members of the People's National Congress Reform, members who have conducted them ourselves well and brought off a Congress in very difficult circumstances, and a Congress that now stands out as a clear indication of where democratic parties should go. I want to also acknowledge the support of our supporters and the wider Guyanese society. A lot of times people believe a political party operates in isolation. It doesn't. I consider my election to the leader of the party as a response from not only the members and supporters, but the wider Guyanese society that felt that my time has come and therefore I should be leader of the party. I promise them that I will seek to do everything that will ensure we build a strong party, and that in the process we be responsive to the concerns of all in our society and develop policies and programs that will contribute to the development of our people. Having said that, to really decide where we go as a party, it is critical that we understand the contributions of all our leaders in the party. Forbes Burnham has been the founder leader, and he defined the critical policies of the party in the context of the era in which he would have lived. We are left with institutions like the National Insurance Scheme, network of roads, schools, etc., that can all be attributed to his contribution. We were followed by Desmond Hoyt, who came at a time when East and West, the wall in the East was about to fall, and the West became the dominant influence. And Desmond Hoyt in that era was able to liberalize the Guyanese economy and to put some institutional mechanisms in place that would have served us well. Things like insulation of the public service, bringing a lot of professional permanent secretaries, etc., into the system. It was followed by Robert Corbyn, who also made a significant contribution. In fact, it is Robert Corbyn who stressed the need for us to move in the direction of coalition politics. And he showed a selflessness when he agreed to go in that direction and even to have primaries in the party, which contributed in some regard to an increase in democracy in the party. He was followed by David Granger, who has left us a legacy which says essentially, give leadership, do not focus on self-aggrandizement, avoid corruption. And so he has made his contribution as well. It is my intention as leader of the party to understand the strengths of our past leaders, their weaknesses, seek to adapt their strengths to this period, if in cases where they are adaptable, and to attenuate the weaknesses so that the party is positioned as a unit capable of getting power and then managing Guyana in the interest of all Guyanese. It is in this context I want to see the People's National Congress reform. The People's National Congress Reform is a strong political party. It has its support base across the country. But we as a party recognize the need for building a broad base and national unity and have become involved in coalition politics. It is my intention to meet the coalition partners, to discuss with them, and to take action to strengthen and improve the performance of the coalition. Because I do believe with coalitions, you tend to reflect the society. Additionally, I believe that the People's Progressive Party has destroyed the fabric of our society. It has again returned to lawlessness. It has again returned to seeking to dominate and control every aspect of the lives of the people of Guyana. And therefore, the People's National Congress Reform has to challenge these injustices and to outline new, more modern positions for the people of Guyana. For instance, I believe we have to sell ourselves as a political party that will serve all Guyanese regardless of ethnicity. But even as we do that, we have to be careful and ensure we represent our support base, our members, etc. Now, the party has to take on the responsibility of giving leadership to the people of Guyana. We need to do our work from the bottom up so that we are in contact with the people. If one accepts that politics is about representation of people, then one first of all has to root oneself in the people. And one of the things I intend to do with the executive of our party is to place our structures on the ground and ensure that they are in contact with our people. We need to be in contact with our people, first of all, to understand their plight. Many people never went beyond Mandela to go to Container City to see how people live. Many don't even know where Plastic City is. But these are all areas that are deprived, vulnerable, and in poverty. One of the directions the party has to go is to champion the cause of the poor. It has to champion the cause of the disadvantaged. It has to champion the cause of the vulnerable. It has to champion the cause of single parents. And so the intention is to place the party at a position where it represents the ordinary man, the man who does not have the economic and other resources to represent themselves. And this is important because at present in Guyana, the People's Progressive Party has been transformed into a party of hustlers. And as they become a party of hustlers, the interest of the average man suffers. And so we will have to champion their cause and to rally them.
I want to make an intervention here, Mr. Leader, and that is you commonly seen at a time when Guyana is now classified as an oil-producing country. And before the APNU left the government, they had put in place a mechanism to address the question of the Natural Resource Fund. And the mechanism was comprised of a group of people who were supposed to look over to make sure that there was integrity in relation to the kind of dispensing of this fund. Only recently I saw, by way of the media, that the government, the current government, is moving to have a legislation passed where we have dismantled this group and put in place a mechanism and have transferred the authority and power from that of the Minister of Finance to that of the President. Now, these are all critical issues. I'm sure you have been following them, and of course it is of concern to the party as well. I heard you speaking after your inauguration that there are a number of issues that the party will have to address, and that was one of them. You also added on that list the question of a national kind of registration list, a voter list. You made that one of the issues that will be addressed. And the need for the holding of local government elections. These are all issues that the party will be dealing with. Now at your dear, how do you intend dealing with these matters?
Well, first of all, let us talk about the Natural Resource Fund. I believe from the time Ali and Jack Dew came to power, they were annoyed, mad, over the fact that Winston Jordan and the APNU-AFC create a regime that will protect our national patrimony. They put in place a committee, an oversight committee that was broad-based, will have many interests represented. And the aim was to ensure, one, individuals just can't spend oil resources willy-nilly. Two, that the people will be involved in the decision-making through their representatives. And three, that will allow us to place money in critical areas that will contribute to the development of Guyana. It does appear that Jack Dew, Irfan Ali, and the PPP, they do not like systems of control. They do not believe the people should be involved in what happens with the oil money. And so they are hurtling to amend Article 22 so that they can put power in the hands of the President and the Minister of Natural Resources, so that they will be in a position to misuse the funds that will come from the oil and gas sector. And that is what will be opposed. We have to oppose it. Our approach to our resources in oil and gas should be one that allows us to do intergenerational preparation, to prepare this generation to get a good life, but prepare the next generation to get a better life than our lives. And so all Guyanese, I believe, have got to become involved in the struggle to stop the People's Progressive Party from changing Article 22. Article 22, as presently structured, gives protection to our oil resources. The amendments that Jack Dew is coming with, they are aimed at creating conditions for them to loot our treasury, for them to pillage our treasury. They want to bring the Dutch disease much faster than it would have gone anywhere else. And we have seen all the symptoms of it. And so it is not a case of opposing the PPP. It's a case of opposing them, putting measures in place to create a kleptocracy so that the hustlers in the PPP can misuse and steal our the funds that come from our oil resources. And so we have to have an orchestrated campaign to ensure that doesn't happen. In fact, I believe that they are proceeding to charge Winston Jordan on Tuesday, but they charged him already in the Imperial Court on Tuesday, solely because he put mechanisms in place to prevent them from stealing. That is the crux of the matter. All the other things about land that was sold to BK, that process started under the PPP. Then they should charge themselves. And if it comes to giving away land, and giving away land was a crime, then Jacques Dio, Irfan Ali and company could not have been in government.
Mm-hmm.
That is not to say Jordan give away land. The courts will determine what happened. What I want to point out to people, that is the facade. The real problem is Jordan has been exposing them. And even though Jacques Dio, who was Jordan's student in budgeting,
that's right,
and the short man, I don't remember his name, Ashley Singh, has also been a student there. They know he will expose them. They know he's equipped to deal with the issues. And so what they're trying to do is to bring charges against him to conceal the fact that this man put mechanisms in place that have resulted in the PPP not being able to take our oil resources and misuse it. As we have seen what they did with flood relief funds. We have seen what they did with COVID-19 funds. The PPP is not into serious development. They are into creating the conditions for a few to get rich. And that is why I will take the message to the Indo-Guyanese community that the PPP does not serve your interests. They serve the interests of a small cabal, and the mass of Guyanese people suffer. Now, the next issue you raise is the voters list.
Yes, the voters list. I heard you mentioning that in your earlier presentations.
I believe everyone in Guyana and everyone in the world, all people know that the voters list we have is a bloated list. They also saw in the recount what happens when you have a bloated list. Dead can vote. People voted without proper identifications, etc. And so no one will doubt that a population of Guyana, 750,000 people, can have a voters list with 600,000 people. When at least 50% of our population is youth.
Yeah, the student population is over 200,000.
Now, so what we are faced with is a list that has to be cleaned. The mechanism we will use to clean it, we will determine. But we need a list that reflects the people in Guyana. And the present list isn't. We also have to note that we have an election commission at this stage in which the chairperson of the commission seems not interested in free and fair elections. She seems more interested in serving the PPP. The reason for it, I don't know. I don't want to speculate. But what I do know is that it is not good for Guyana, and it cannot result in free and fair elections. Now, I believe the local government elections must be held, but they must be held with a clean voters list. And so I link the question of a voters list, of elections, local government elections, to a clean voters list. But I'm also aware that the PPP historically, it does not like local government elections. It has avoided it except when it is in opposition. So, it is clear to me that they want no local government elections. In fact, they have no interest in local democracy, and I tell you why. Every REO that they place in a region, even if the AP and UAFC won the region, they are placed with a mandate to dictate to the council and avoid the will of the people. In region 4, 7, and 10, the people elected the AP and UAFC. But the PPP, through a wild card named Dharam Lal, is seeking to ensure that the will of the people is not manifest. It's another issue we have to take on at the right time. So, I have no illusions. The People's Progressive Party has no interest in local government elections.
I say to you, Robert Norton, that I recognize from what you have said that the party has its task cut out. And on the question of coalition politics, that is an issue that has been on the front burner, not just in Guyana, but in the region and wider field. Sometimes when people talk about coalition politics, they talk about perhaps the behavior of some groups that form the coalition and so on. And I heard you saying that you intend to meet with the members of the coalition to address this question as to, because of the composition of our society, different ethnic groups, and it's important that people understand very early how you will be dealing with this issue of coalition politics. I mean, an issue I believe is very important to this country based on the composition of our population. And as a result of that, I would be glad if you can expound a little more in terms of how the party intend to deal with this, after which I will open the lines for those of you who are with us. I'm going to open the lines so you can make your calls and ask your questions. So I hope that the leader will be able to provide some answers. So,
first of all, we intend to discuss coalition politics at the level of the Central Executive of the People's National Congress Reform. In fact, the executive is going to place a number of policy issues for discussion and decision so that we can advise our members and we operate from one page. But that apart, coalition politics has always been difficult. But coalition politics can be successful if partners can develop trust in each other, if partners can meet, discuss the issues, and arrive at positions. If we can make compromise to find consensus, then coalition politics can and will succeed. And I want to say to you that it is my intention, even though I am aware that the People's National Congress Reform is the strongest political party in the coalition, it is my intention to treat all members of the coalition with respect, listen to their views, and to work with them, while at the same time being cognizant that we are the largest party and that our membership and supporters expect certain things of us. No, but I do believe that if as a party, the PNCR, we continue to do our work, and we can get the coalition to do work in communities and increase their support, then we will be in a better position. And so for me, we have to become involved in coalition building rather than coalition battling. And I believe once we can do coalition building, we'll succeed. It is my intention to engage the WPA because I know it is a sentiment in the party that we should. So it's my intention to engage them. We have to do an analysis of collation, and I said we'll do that at the level of the central executive, and then we clearly define where we are going and proceed to build the coalition.
Yeah, thank you. For viewers, the lines are now open. You have a few minutes before we close up, but I want you to focus on one other thing. I heard you saying you plan to engage the private sector. In our society, we do have a private sector commission, and there are a number of private businesses operating in Guyana. Some are large, some are small, some are medium-sized. And the party, obviously in formulating its policies, will have to take account of the role of the private sector. How do you intend to?
Well, first of all, the party historically and at present has always believed that the private sector has a critical role to play. What I'm doing at this stage is to draw a distinction between the private sector and the private sector commission. A lot of times we can mix up the tree and the forest. The private sector commission are a number of trees in the forest. The forest is that wider expanse of private business of all ethnic groups. And it is clear to me, that the private sector commission does not at this stage represent the private sector in Guyana. And so while I will engage the private sector commission, we'll have to work out modalities for engaging the private sector generally. Because since I have spoken on this matter, a number of small businessmen, mostly of Indo-Guyanese descent, have expressed the view that I'm going in the right direction, and they have also expressed an interest in meeting with the party so that they can give their position and we be guided by that position. Look, we must not be browbeaten. Guyana will develop if we have a wider base of small, medium-sized businesses being involved. And we must do everything to ensure that that base widens and that there is not a monopoly of a number of families and friends just changing leadership to claim some democratic process. We have to see a genuine, inclusive approach to private sector development, and those people should inform our policy decisions moving forward.
Yeah, beautiful. I like that. Like I said to you, viewers, the lines are open. We have a few minutes remaining, and after which I think you should seize the opportunity. You may have a question or comment for the leader of the People's National Congress Reform. We have him in studio today talking about some of his policies. Recently, I noticed that they were talking about a bill to be passed where they are seeking to have the involvement of Guyanese and Guyanese businesses being involved in the, I don't remember the term they use for that, participating in the oil and gas industry, local content. The local content bill. I noticed that there has been a lot of promotion on that one. I don't know. Have you had a chance to look at it?
In fact, it is the local content bill that caused a lot of members of the private sector to start to talk to me, because they do not see it as a local content bill that will give them access. They see it as a bill that when passed and become an act, that will serve the same elite.
Interest.
No, I want to make another point. What is the sense of talking about a local content bill if the majority or a large section of the private sector wouldn't benefit from it? It becomes a facade. We need to not only talk about local content, we have to put mechanisms in place to ensure that a wider cross-section of the Guyanese people who are involved in the oil and gas sector to benefit. I believe the PPP in the last election colluded with some people in Trinidad. I don't want to say Trinidadians so that it be misinterpreted. And they are now paying them through giving them access to the oil and gas industry. And therefore, by the very approach, they themselves are writing a law that the reality doesn't permit them to implement, because they are indebted to forces that help them to come to power illegally. We have got to get a local content bill that guarantees the people of Guyana of all walks of life can benefit, and that is not in the making.
The last time you were on this program, we were discussing Forbes Burnham and public education, and you made the point that you would like to speak on both the formal as well as the informal education, particularly in this question of local content and a few of the other subject areas that you have mentioned. The question of education, particularly in relation to this question of local content, it seemed to be a subject that ought to be where the administration should engage in public education so people can understand. Now, you were talking about what is required, what your party will be pushing for, but it seems to me as though the current government is moving ahead with this local content proposal that they have on the table right now, which seem to be, according to you, has excluded a wider cross-section of small Guyanese businessmen as part of this outfit. Now, this question of public education on these matters seem to be evading, or that they have been evading public education in these matters. What are your views?
I wouldn't say evading. They have no interest in public education, because to educate the public in a professional way will run counter to their interests and ambitions. The PPP is a propaganda machinery. It has nothing to do with fact. Public education has to be fact-based. And since the PPP has no interest in facts, DPI is a propaganda machinery, not a public information machinery. Let's assume that it was public education. In dealing with Article 22, they would have given to the people, this is what the present legislation says, as a matter of fact. And then they would have put what they are proposing. So people would have understood both sides and make a choice. What they are doing is putting the one side and hoping to force the legislation down the throats of the people, because they know if they do public education, people will not buy it. By the very nature of Jagdeo, and I hardly call here for analysis on these issues, the world knows why, is not anything about public education. It is about self-aggrandizement. It is about individual interests that they want to pursue. The sole purpose for amending Article 22 is for the PPP government to determine how they spend the oil resources without any oversight whatsoever. And that is bad for Guyana.
One other subject I heard you on, and I would like you to perhaps expound a little more on that one, is that of the breaking up of Region 4 in 3 different districts, East Bank, Georgetown, and East Coast. And I heard you saying that that is not good for Guyana as well. Now, what is the party's position on this breaking up? I saw the Attorney General making statements in relation to the usefulness of such a move? I don't know.
It is useless except for PPP's electoral interests. Look, Region 4 is the largest region population-wise. Region 4 is won every time by first the PNCR and then the APNU AFC. And so the PPP is concerned that they cannot win Region 4. So what they are seeking to do is to produce a mechanism to win Region 4. They believe on the East Bank, they will do well. They believe on the East Coast, it will be close, but they will do well. They know that they will win the south of Georgetown. Sorry, the north of Georgetown. But they know they cannot win the south. And they know that the bulk of the population is in the south. And so to nullify the impact of the African Guyanese community in the south, to nullify the impact of the PNCR support base, they are coming up with boundary gerrymandering so that they can give themselves the chance they want in the elections. They know that they are in power fraudulently. They know the figures are showing that they cannot win an election with a proper voters list, because no longer can they say Indians are in the majority and it's automatic. They are now other forces. There's a reduction in the Indo-Guyanese population. There's an ascendancy in the indigenous peoples population. And so they are worried. In an attempt to guarantee themselves power, they are seeking to break up Region 4. Now they must know that the PNCR has interests just like them, and that we are not going to allow them to violate our rights and affect our interests. Whatever it takes, Region 4 has to be one constituency. But let's assume, like they claim, that it was for counting of votes. Then they didn't have to break up Region 4. All they have to do is to count the votes in the various and then bring them together. The attempt to break up Region 4 has nothing to do with efficiency. It has to do with a PPP plot to find a mechanism to get political power through the back door. That's the reality.
Well, thank you, Mr. Norton. I think we have run out of time. I know our viewers has been glued to the television set this morning with those areas that you have addressed, and I want to say thank you again, because these are all critical issues that are out there. People have been talking about them, and with you now at the helm of the People's National Congress Reform, the feeling out there is that the people feel, I'm talking about Georgetown particularly, they feel that you are the man to right these wrongs as far as they're concerned. And now that you have outlined the party's position, we at the level of the... Morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
Pleasant good morning to you, yeah?
Good morning.
Yeah, Andrew.
Okay?
Yes, Andrew, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I just call in concern about all these private sector listening to Mr. Norton and how he wants them to engage. It's very good. But we got a bigger problem. This problem we got to look at, we talk about this election thing. Look the amount of Spanish people in this country, and then we address that's the part. And then we go too far. There's the part. Let me look after the part.
Well,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Andrew.
it is not only Spanish. After I spoke about the government bringing Bangladeshis and Indians in, they have instructed the people in the Ministry of Home Affairs not to produce any records on them. So we have to deal with the total attempt by the PPP to bring persons who we believe they want to register. But we will have to deal with it, and ensure that it doesn't happen. But we cannot deal with one problem at a time. We have to deal with all the problems because it is a compendium of problems that we need to solve.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say to our viewers that we might, in the near future, maybe try to get back the leader. I know he'll be a busy man, taking into account these issues that you have outlined that the party is challenged with. I still see some people trying to get into here to us. I will take this last call. Morning, you're on here. Morning. Hello? Hello, you're on here. I missed that call. Yeah, with those challenges that the party is facing, the party has its work cut out. And I want to wish you the best. Hope that you will be able to, in your stewardship of the party, that you will succeed. On behalf of the Forbes Bonham Foundation, I want to say to all of our viewers who have invited us in your living rooms and in your kitchen, thank you. You will see me again the 4th Sunday in the month of January when we bring to you another program called The State of the Nation. Thank you.